Alright guys, so this is a review for our test that's coming up tomorrow. So this is going to be reviewing this first part of operations and functions. So here you see that there are three functions that are at the very top, okay? And that's how the questions are done. When you do your test, you're going to have more than two, you can have 3 or 4 options on functions. Make sure you read correctly. So I'm going to start with problem 1, and it asks to find f of 3. So the f tells me I'm going to go to the f function, and I'm only going to worry about what's on the right side, 2x plus 7. Then wherever x is, right, in my equation actually, right, that's where my 3 is going to go. So I'm going to substitute in an x in place, a 3 in place of x. So 2, make sure you put parentheses. Oops, sorry, 7. And then in that parentheses, we substitute in a 3, and we do the math. It's touching the 3, that's 2 times 3, that's 6, plus 7 is, wow, I went blank, 13. Alright, number 2 says f plus g. Okay, they might write it like that. Oh no, that one's fine. So f plus g, I'm going to ignore h. I'm only looking at f and g, okay? So f plus g, so that's going to be 2x plus 7 plus x squared minus 1. And all I have to worry about is combining like terms. There is no other x squared, so that doesn't combine. There's no other regular x, so that doesn't combine with anything. You just bring it down. And the only two regular numbers here that will be considered like terms are 7 minus 1, which will give me a positive 6. Alright, number 3. Number 3, we are subtracting. So you're going to start with g, right? It says start with g, so I'm going to go g, so x squared minus 1. Now this part is important. I can't just go straight and put h there, the h function. I have to use parentheses. So I'm going to put minus parentheses. Then I can substitute in h, x squared minus x. That's important when it comes to subtraction. I didn't have to do it over here on number 2 because it was addition. Okay, so this first part stays the same. It's just x squared minus 1. But then this negative, it has to be distributed to the x squared and to the x. So that will change the signs. Now it's negative x squared, and then they went from a negative x to a positive x. Then I can combine like term. Well, there are 2x squares now, this one and this one. So 1x squared plus another x squared, that's 2x squared. And then there's no other x, so just bring the x. And there's another big x, so just bring the 1. 4 and multiply that times g. I'm going to get the f function, 2x plus 7, if this would let me write. It's hard. Times, so I'm going to put parentheses because it's multiplication, times the g function, which is x squared minus 1. Since both of these are binomial, meaning two terms inside the parentheses, and it's multiplication, we're going to have to do the FOIL method or the rainbow method, as I like to call it. So that's going to be with 2x times x squared, well, 2x to the third power, because I'm multiplying 1x to an x squared, or x to the 1, so now I'm going to end up with 3 x's, right? Because x squared means I have 2 x's being multiplied. Then that 2x has another x, so that's going to end up with being 3 x's. Then it's going to be 2x times negative 1, negative 2x. Then I move on to the bottom part here. 7 times x squared, 7x squared, and it's positive, so put a plus. Then 7 times negative 1, negative 7. And then I'm going to combine like terms. There is no 2x, there's no other x to the third power. So we just write that one down. If this would let me write it down. I don't know, it's not letting me. It's being difficult. 2 to the third power if my laptop lets me write. I'll write it up here maybe. My laptop screen needs to be cleaned or something. And then there's no other x squared, so 7x squared stays the same. There's no other regular x, and there's no other regular number. So technically, you just FOIL and pretty much done. Alright, so that's our answer. Because nothing combines, so we're done with that part. Alright, unless I made a mistake. No, looks good. Okay, if you catch the mistake, let me know. Alright, now the next one is division. We're going to divide f by g. Very important which one comes first. F is being divided by g, so that has to go on top. So f is 2x plus 7. I'm going to make a line for division. 2x plus 7 on the top. And then the g function is x squared minus 1 on the bottom. Most of your problems in your assignment that we did for this one, you wouldn't simplify any further. That's as far as you could go. And so we're done. This is our answer plus a restriction. The restriction is whatever would make this bottom part go to 0. So if you look, you can kind of figure it out. Or you can just set the whole thing equal to 0 and then solve for x. Okay, you can kind of already figure out it has to be 1 minus 1. But we're just going to just humor me. We would add a 1 to the other side so we can cancel out this one. So we have a plus 1 here. So it would just be 0 plus 1. And it's x squared. But if I have 1 x squared, that will give me a 1. But if I have negative 1 x squared, negative 1 squared, it will also give me a positive 1. So either 1 or negative 1 will be my restriction here. So then x cannot equal 1 or negative 1. Okay, so just careful on that one. So whatever makes the denominator equal to 0, that would be our restriction. So this is our answer right here. Okay, so you just set it up. Look at the denominator. What makes the bottom go to 0? That's our restriction. Why? Because we cannot have 0 in the denominator. Alright, now 6, we have f, and then we have h of x. So we're going to start with the f function. And you can kind of see that the h of x is nested in there. So again, the f function, is 2x plus 7. And then wherever there's an x, I'm going to rewrite it, and now I'm going to put parentheses because I'm going to substitute in the h function in place of x. So I'm going to go up here, my h function is x squared minus x, so x squared minus x. Then we're going to distribute, so 2 times x squared, x squared, 2 times negative x, negative 2x. Once I distribute, I no longer need to write the parentheses, and that was the goal, so I can simplify. Well, nothing is like terms, so this is my answer. Nothing can combine. So we move on. Alright, now this one's the same two functions, but now it's backwards. The h is first, so I'm going to start with that function. It's going to be, oh, and just real quick, guys, on this last one, the same thing. On number 6, just so you know, they could have written it like this. They could, instead of having the h inside the f of x like that, they could have also written F with an open circle. Okay? Because there's some that'll look like this on your test and some that'll look like this. But it's the same thing, so make sure you don't confuse it with multiplication. Alright, so same thing on this one actually. They could write it like this, or they could write it H with a little open circle, and then the -5. Okay, so just heads up on how it will look different, but it's the same process. So I'm going to start with the H function, and again, the H function is x squared minus x. So x squared minus x, and then wherever there's an x, I have to put parentheses. So parentheses squared minus parentheses. And then f is inside those parentheses, so I'm going to go back up here and see what the f function is again. 2x plus 7. So I'm going to put 2x plus 7, 2x plus 7. Alright, this one's going to be a little lengthy. So I have 2x plus 7 squared, so I'm going to have to write 2x plus 7 twice, because it's being raised to the second power because of this squared there. Okay, and then on this right side, I'm not doing anything yet. So I'm just bringing it down with parentheses, very important. It does need it. Okay, so on this left side, we're going to do 40. 2 times x is 2x squared. 2x times 2 is 2, oh, not 2x squared. 2x times 2x is 4x squared, right? 2 times 2 is 4, x times x is x squared. Then 2x times 7 is 14x. Then I move on to the bottom here. 7 times 2x is also 14x. And then last there, 7 times 7 is 49. Okay. I'm going to combine like terms, which will be the middle two terms, that 14x and the 14x, and I'm going to write it up here. Change colors, I'm going to write it up here. So it's going to be 4x squared plus 28x plus 49. But I still have that minus 2x plus 7 at the end. Now, in order for me to get rid of those parentheses, I have to distribute that minus to the 2x and to the 7. Or multiply a -1, or just switch the signs, however you want to see it. Then I can actually combine like terms. Okay. So these two are like terms, and these two are like terms. The 4 is not because of the x squared, so we just bring that down. We're not even close to being done. Okay, guys. Oh, we're almost done, but not really. So that's going to be 26 because it's 28 minus 2. So 26 is x. And then 49 minus 7 would be 42. Now, the last step here is this 5 over here. It's -5. That -5 needs to be substituted in place of every x that we have here. I'm going to go 4 parentheses -5 squared plus 26 parentheses -5, and last thing there, bring down the 42. Okay. Now -5 squared is 25, and 4 times 25 is 100. Then 26 times -5, that would be 6 times 5 is 30, and then that would be 130 negative, and then bring down the plus 42. So that's going to be 100 minus 130 is -30, plus 42 would be positive 12. Okay. Now that I think about it, we actually didn't have to do all this work. This is where we could have stopped. Where could we have stopped? Oh, here. Now that I think about it, I actually could have gone back. So I'm just going to go back to this step right here. all that work is what you're supposed to do, but when you have a number, you can actually stop before. Not that I want to like give you shortcuts, but whatever. You can actually go here and go 2 parentheses plus 7 squared minus 2 parentheses plus 7 in parentheses. The only problem is that there's a lot of parentheses and there's a chance of messing up. So there's a -5 and the -5 that we have there from over here. And if I do my math properly, I could save myself all those steps, but I need to make sure I follow order of operation. So I would have to focus inside the parentheses first, see what I can simplify. So that would be -10. I'm going to write it over here. -10 plus 7 squared minus -10 plus 7. Okay? Then this can simplify to -3, but I still have the squared. And then this can simplify to also -3. -3 squared is 9. Then I have minus a -3, which will change to a +3. You see how I end up getting 12 still? So, just a suggestion, when you get something like this, the easiest way is to get your first functions, substitute in your second function in there, and then substitute in your number. Okay? Hopefully I saved you some headaches for tomorrow. Alright, this one's super easy. Find the inverse of the function. So it's going to be f with a little -1 equals. And all you have to do is switch the x and y, switch the x and y coordinate, switch the x and y coordinate. Okay, done. Alright, next one. It says find the inverse function for 9 and 10 and graph both functions. Okay, so that's what we learned yesterday when we did inverse function. If you remember, step 1 was change that f of x to y. Step 2, switch the x with the y, so that's x equals 1/4 y. And then step 3, solve for y. So if I want to solve for y, I need to get rid of the 1/4 and the 7. We get rid of the 7 first by adding a 7. But if I add a 7 on the left, I add a 7 on the right. So that leaves me with 1/4 y on the, if I add a 7 on the right, I have to add 1 on the left, and that leaves me with 1/4 y on the right. Now to get rid of a fraction, we multiply by the reciprocal, which is 4/1. I don't really need the 1 because it's a 1 over 4. Whatever. So that'll cancel out, but if I multiply on one side, I multiply on the other. But careful because we need to have parentheses on this left side since we have 2 terms. We distribute that 4, so that would be 4 times x is 4x, and 4 times 7 is 28. And we are left with y by itself, so we are done solving. Last thing is switch that y with f of -1 with this notation, and that's going to equal to our answer there, 4x plus 28. Okay. And then right now on the bottom we have graph paper, and we'll graph them and we can see if we did it correct. Alright, let's do number 10. So number 10, same thing, step 1. Change that f of x to a y. Step 2, switch the x with the y. And then step 3, we're going to solve for y. So we need to get rid of the 2, the negative, no it is 2, sorry, this was second negative to me. We're going to get rid of the 2 and the -1. We get rid of the -1 first by adding a 1 because that's the inverse operation. So I'm going to add a 1 on the left side also. Bring down the 2y. Then the last step there is divide by 2. But when I divide everything. I'm going to divide the x and the 1 with the 2. Just like when we multiply, the same thing with division. The other side has to be divided. That's the thing. So if you simplify it, it's going to be 1/2 x plus 1/2. You can, if you want, you can leave the x up here in the numerator. I'm just putting it next to it, the fraction, so it's fine. Those cancel out. All right, and then we switch our y with our f to the -1, which is our inverse notation. And that's 1/2 x plus 1/2. Okay. Now I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can graph. I'm only going to graph the second one here, number 10, so I don't have to be going back and forth. So I'm going to, in gray, I'm going to put the linear parent function, which starts at 0, 0, goes up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, just so we can kind of see where it should be reflected. Remember, we kind of talked about that. It should reflect over the y equals x, or the linear parent function. Then I'm going to graph this first function here, 2x minus 1. I'm going to graph that in blue, so my y-intercept is -1. Then it's going up, since our slope is 2. Remember, it's 2 over 1. So up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. Not my best graph, but I'm doing the best I can with this stuff. Alright, so más o menos, that's my graph. Now I'm going to do in red the inverse function. So my y-intercept is 1/2. Ooh, that's going to be hard to graph. So that would be here. Then I'm going up 1 over 2, since I started at 1/2. Up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, backwards. Down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2. Okay, since I started right at 1/2, that one was just weird to do. Okay, not my best graph. Alright. Now you're supposed to pick where it goes right through a point to see if they are inverses of each other. So I'm going to pick this one, and hopefully it's a good point. Let me see, I'm going to pick this one right here. 2, 3. I'm going to do 2, 3. And then I'm going to switch them and see if it lands on the other one, 3, 2. Okay, and it would be this point right here. I know, not my best graph, but if I had it on paper, it would be better. Also, if our y-intercept wasn't 1/2, then that would also have been easier. Alright guys, the next part that we need to talk about is just for a quick reminder, how to determine if something is a function or not. We only look at our x values, right? Those are the ones we focus on. Remember, we don't date our x's twice. So we see that x twice, which would be this one, right? There's no repetition here. So yes, this was a function. But here, we have a repetition with the 7. So if you see that function, that x twice, the x value twice, with a different value, that does not function. Remember, I tell you guys to help you remember, we don't take our x's twice, that does not function. That 7 is there twice, so no, it's not a function. And then we look at number 6, and we only look at the x value, right? Not the y value. So this one is a function, because the y value repeated, but that's not important. Now, on our next example here, we're going to use the vertical line test. Is this a function? Well, if I make a vertical line anywhere on this graph, it should only touch once. Here it would touch once, but on this one, it would actually touch 3 times. So this is not a function. Over here, if I do a vertical line anywhere, it would actually only touch once, so this is a function. Okay? So that's a review. The next thing is review on domain and range. When you have a graph with points, domain is still just all your x values. So if you want, you can see this point, the x value on this point is on 2, right? The x value on this point is 3. And then the x value on that last point is 4. So my domain here would be 2, 3, 4. I'm going to do the same thing over here on the next graph for domain. Well, there's a point on the x value of -3, then at -2, then at -1, then at 0, then at 1, then at 2, then at 3, then at 4, right? There's a point, and I'm only focusing on the x values for domain. Now let's do range. Range are the y values. So here on this point, I'm not looking at the 3 anymore, I'm looking at this value here. What is the y value? That looks like a half, so I'm going to put 0.5. Then my next point, you know what, I think these points are a little off, like I think the graph should have been a little bit better. Well, let's pretend that these points are up here on the 2, okay? So I'm going to make that 2, and since they're both at 2, I only have to write it once. And then let's pretend this point is right at the 3, so my next value is 3. And the last point there, let's say it's at 4, so 4. So make sure you're looking at the right value for the right thing. Range is y, the domain is x. Okay, and then let's finish this one. Our range, so this is our point. Here is at y equals 0, so 0. Here I have 2 points and my y at 1. Here I have 4 points at 2. And here I have 1 point at 3. So those are my y values. Okay, so make sure you're looking at it correctly. Alright, and then our last example here is this graph. Domain. You see it is a continuous function, but it starts at this point on the left side, and it stops at this point. So that is -8 on the left. So my domain, remember we go left to right for domain, it's -8, comma, and it goes to 6 on the right. That's a closed circle, so brackets, and that's an open circle on the right, so parentheses. Now let's do range. We're going to go bottom to top because that's how our y-axis goes, right? This is our x-axis, and this is our y-axis. So we'll let me write. So we go bottom to top. How low does this graph go? That's -8. How high does it go? And it turned out to be the same values. +6. But now the -8 is at an open circle, so that's a parentheses. And the 6 is at a closed circle, so that's brackets. Also, guys, if it's infinity, remember, we're going to use parentheses, right, whether it's positive or negative. And if it is a closed circle like this one, or a solid line, then it would be brackets, okay? It was a solid line. Meaning, like, if when you had a graph, and if you remember, and it was a circle like that, then we would go like left to right. That's a solid line right there. It's no open circle. Alright guys, hope this helps for your test. Good luck.